Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking on the future of Europe, and the analysis we've processed is, well, it's pretty sobering.
It is. Our source material, which is a major strategic research document, it suggests the continent is facing what they call an unprecedented convergence of crises.
Right. Economic, political, demographic, all hitting at once. And the claim is that this could, fundamentally reshape the continent by 2035.
Exactly. And this isn't just about, say, a normal recession or some regional conflict. The report argues these forces are interacting to cause systemic fragmentation.
Systemic fragmentation.
Yeah, across 6 key dimensions. So everything from governance and social cohesion all the way to technology and defense. The risks are really internal and structural.
That's the key. So our mission today is to unpack these dimensions and, using the microeconomic lens of Porter's diamond model, really analyze why Europe risks, well, not just a decline, but a slide into a sort of permanent second-tier global status.
We're looking for the weaknesses underneath the daily headlines.
Precise.
And if you need just one number to set the scene, something really shocking, look at the economy.
Okay.
After 30 years of the single market, internal trade barriers are still equivalent to a 44% tariff on goods.
44%.
And for services, it's a massive 110%.
That's unbelievable.
And just to put that in perspective for you, those internal EU barriers, they're roughly 3 times higher than the barriers between, say, California and New York.
That is just astonishing. I mean, you would never tolerate that level of friction inside the U.S. economy.
Yeah.
Yet it's built into the fabric of Europe.
It speaks directly to that core thesis of fragmentation.
Okay, let's dig in. Let's start with those immediate signs, the political sphere, because that instability seems to be driving so much of the current gridlock.
The political shifts are definitely dramatic, and, they're easy to measure. The data shows far-right parties have really become Europe's most popular political family.
Most popular.
Yeah, they took over 26% of the vote in the 2024 elections. This is way beyond just a protest vote. It's a real structural realignment.
And the research points out this isn't just some abstract trend, right? It's translated into actual governing power.
That's right. The source specifically names 7 EU member states where far-right parties are now in government coalitions.
7.
We're talking Croatia, the Czech Republic, Finland, Hungary, Italy, the Netherlands, Slovakia. And when these parties gain power, their focus, their mandate is often on national interests, not pan-European integration.
So how does that political shift? How does that gum up the works in Brussels? I mean, the whole point of the European project is supposed to be coordination.
It translates directly into paralysis. The report calls it governance gridlock.
Gridlock?
Yeah, you get more of these strongly national parties in the European Parliament, and suddenly building stable, consensus-driven coalitions becomes incredibly difficult. So policy just slows down.
And we're seeing that in the national capitals, too. I mean, look at the legislative chaos in France, or the way Hungary just keeps using its veto.
Precisely. Hungary's routine vetoes on critical issues, whether it's Russia sanctions or budgets, it just completely undermines the EU's ability to act cohesively.
And when you're facing pressure from Russia or China, that kind of internal delay has to be hugely costly.
It is. Now, shifting to the economy, let's go back to those barriers we mentioned.
That 44% number for goods and the huge 110 for services. I mean, why are they still there after 3 decades?
Well, it's the persistence of fragmented national regulations. For goods, it's often, different standards, compliance costs. But for services, that huge barrier is mostly about licensing, professional qualifications, different tax laws across 27 different countries.
So it massively discourages companies from expanding across borders.
Absolutely. It means the EU is sort of canceling out its own biggest advantage, that massive market of 450 million consumers.
If a German tech company has to jump through 27 different hoops to sell in Italy or Spain, that isn't really a single market, is it?
You've hit the nail on the head. And that fragmentation is just devastating for global competitiveness. The sources show Europe's GDP per capita has been stuck at about 72% of U.S. levels.
A huge performance gap.
And it's projected to get worse. If these frictions continue, it could fall to just 60 or 65% of U.S. levels by 2035.
That's not a temporary dip. That is a structural decline.
Exactly. And the result is a massive scale disadvantage. The research projects that the average European firm, especially in new tech sectors, will be 30 to 40% smaller by revenue than its U.S. and Chinese rivals.
So they just can't compete on cost or market power.
They can't. They can't dictate global standards.
Okay, this is where we need to go deeper. Beyond the immediate friction and look at the long-term stuff demographics technology. The source material uses Porter's diamond model for this.
Right. The diamond model is great because it forces you to look at four interconnected drivers of competition: factor conditions, demand conditions, related industries, and firm strategy and rivalry.
So what you have, who's buying it, who supports you, and how tough is the competition. It structures the complexity.
Precisely.
Let's start with the base then. Factor conditions, the resources, the talent. The report calls the demographic outlook a catastrophic decline. That's strong language.
It is, but the numbers back it up. The EU's working age population is set to peak in 2026, and then it starts contracting. We're talking about a projected loss of about 1 million workers every single year through 2050.
1 million a year. Can you give us a specific country example of that aging?
The classic case is Italy. You have a fertility rate of just 1.21, which is way below replacement level, and a median age of 48.7, one of the highest in the world.
So you have fewer people working, and they're supporting a much, much larger pool of retirees. What does that do? Is it just a massive burden on pensions and healthcare?
It's a huge burden on public finances, absolutely. But it's also a constraint on dynamism. Fewer young workers means less innovation, a tighter labor market. It just hurts your whole competitive condition.
Okay, so if the workforce is shrinking, maybe technology and energy can pick up the slack. Let's start with technology. The numbers on dependence are startling.
They are. Over 80% of Europe's critical digital infrastructure, cloud, core software, it's imported, mostly from the US.
So Europe is locked into tech paths decided elsewhere.
Yes. And when you look at the most critical emerging field, artificial intelligence, the picture is even worse.
What's the projection there?
Europe is on track to capture less than 5% of the global AI market value by 2035.
Only 5%. Compared to what?
Compared to 50% for the US and 35% for China. I mean, if you're basically shut out of the century's defining growth sector, your competitive future is, well, it's limited.
And then there's energy, which hits all that heavy industry Europe is famous for.
The war in Ukraine just exacerbated an existing problem. European industrial gas prices are still 3 to 5 times higher than in the US.
3 to 5 times. That's unsustainable.
It is. For chemicals, for metals, for glass production. It forces manufacturing to either relocate or just shrink, which undermines Europe's traditional industrial strength.
Okay, so the factor conditions are a huge problem. But let's look at the other parts of the diamond. What about demand conditions? Does Europe have that unified, sophisticated consumer base?
Not really, no. Because of the fragmentation, firms face a patchwork of national tastes and regulations. It stops them from getting those big, quick returns on innovation. Demand itself is fragmented.
So a U.S. startup designs for one massive market. A European one has to tailor its product 27 ways.
Exactly. Which leads us to the third part, related and supporting industries. Europe has world-class universities, but the support system, especially finance, is broken.
Why? Why isn't Europe funding its own brilliant ideas?
It's financial fragmentation again. The Capital Markets Union, which is supposed to unify all the stock markets and venture capital, it's still just an idea, really.
So the money is trapped in national pools.
Right. So European firms can't raise the huge sums they need to scale up in high-risk sectors like AI. If you need €1 billion, you almost always have to go to the U.S. markets for it.
Which often means you move your headquarters there, too.
Exactly. And finally, you have rivalry. The research suggests that while Europe has great companies, internal competition is often weakened by national protectionism, protecting national champions.
So you don't get that aggressive, cutthroat competition that really forces innovation.
Not in the same way you see in the U.S. or China.
So if we put it all together,
Yeah.
factor conditions declining, demand fragmented, support inadequate, rivalry dampened, where is the ultimate breakdown? Because the report does say Europe has these incredible individual strengths.
That's what's so fascinating. The individual parts can be world-class. The human capital, the regulatory sophistication, the industrial clusters. But the core competitive failure, the thing that stops the diamond from working, is what the report calls the integration effect.
The inability to connect the dots.
That's it. It's a system failure, and it's rated severe in all of the emerging tech sectors. Europe creates brilliance, research from Cambridge or ETH Zurich, but that brilliance gets commercialized in Silicon Valley.
Because it's just easier and faster to scale there.
Exactly. And the talent follows the money. That's the brain drain.
What are the numbers on that?
We're seeing 40 to 50% of top STEM graduates either emigrating to the U.S. or getting snapped up by U.S. firms' European offices, where they work on non-European strategies.
So Europe is literally exporting the value of its own human capital.
It generates the talent but can't keep the economic benefit.
So given this profound systemic failure, what does it mean for the next decade? The source lays out 3 scenarios, right?
Yes, a clear fork in the road. And based on the current trajectory, the most likely outcome is scenario 1, managed decline. They give that a 70% probability.
Managed decline. What does that actually look like for the average person? Because quality of life is still very high.
It stays high, but it stagnates. Europe holds on to its share of global GDP, but it loses all strategic autonomy. It gets shut out of high-growth sectors, becomes dependent on U.S. and Chinese tech, and ultimately on the U.S. for its security.
A comfortable retirement, but with no global influence.
A very good way to put it.
What about the other scenarios?
Yeah.
The ones where Europe either turns it around or things get much worse.
The high-reward path is scenario 2, systemic integration. That's a 15% probability. It would require radical, politically difficult reforms.
Like what?
Like a massive coordinated investment program of over 800 billion euros, finally getting that capital markets union done, and seriously narrowing the tech gap.
And the worst case?
That's the fragmentation spiral, also 15%. This is competitive collapse. You could see major countries leaving key treaties, the single market breaking up, and the EU's global GDP share falling below 10%.
So the analysis gives a pretty chilling and very specific deadline for action. There's a critical decision window.
A very narrow one. The window for reversing these trends is between 2026 and 2028.
Why there?
Because that's when the EU designs its next major budget cycle. That's the last real chance. The report estimates they need 500 to 800 billion euros in coordinated investment in digital, energy, defense, and innovation.
And why is 2030 the hard deadline? What happens if they miss that window?
The source is explicit. After 2030, 2 structural locks engage. First, the tech gaps become insurmountable. It would take over 10 years to catch up. Second, the demographic trends become irreversible until at least 2050.
So they have to act now, before those constraints become destiny.
They do.
Just to hammer home that fragmentation theme one last time, let's look at defense. You'd think that's one area where integration would be obvious, given the threats.
You would think. But it perfectly illustrates the failure of that integration effect. Less than 20% of defense procurement happens at the EU level.
And the most wasteful stat.
For every single type of weapon the U.S. produces, the EU manufactures more than 5 variations of that same weapon.
So it's less like a strategy, more like 27 separate garage projects.
Exactly. It wastes billions, kills economies of scale, and it actively prevents armies from being able to work together efficiently.
And that's money that could be going into that 800 billion euro fund they desperately need.
Precisely.
So, to recap the big picture here, Europe's problem isn't just bad luck. It's a structural transformation, driven by its own internal failures, incomplete integration, demographics, and external pressures from the US, China, and Russia.
Right. The evidence suggests this fragmentation isn't just a political headache. It's a systemic competitive disease that's leading to structural economic decline. And the choice is stark. Accept a managed decline or find the political will for a level of integration that right now seems highly unlikely.
And that brings us to a final provocative thought for you, the listener. The analysis is clear. Europe's weakness isn't a lack of brilliance. It has the universities, the researchers, the industries. The problem is a systemic integration failure.
Brilliance created in Cambridge or Zurich is commercialized in Silicon Valley.
Exactly. So if the core challenge isn't creating brilliance, but keeping it and scaling it, what structural reform, and I mean besides just throwing more money at it, would actually unlock that existing European potential? Think about those fragmented demand and rivalry conditions we talked about.
It is a critical question for a continent facing what is really its decade of decision.
We'll leave you with that thought. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the world's most critical strategic documents.